You're never gonna get better at the intro if you don't do the intro.
I'm so bad
Welcome to
at
the
it.
Supper Talk podcast, where we have all those dinner time conversations that you don't want to have with your family. My name is Chris, and this is my dad, Steve.
Howdy.
And today we are probably not going to solve any of the world's problems because I have not been keeping up to date on what's been going on in the world, as we took last week off and we are now coming back this week. And I have legitimately not been doing anything. It's been fantastic. Uh, Dad, what's been on your plate the last couple weeks?
Cool. It's so funny. Uh, for me, summer is not like a break at all. There's because I have the same class load, and in the middle of the summer, I have a double class load. So but that's what I've been doing is schoolwork.
I have been starting the beginnings of my second business, which is the um, uh, creative consultancy. And I have been understanding how much of a headache it is to work with creatives. And now I understand why everyone was telling me to not do this.
Yeah,
Uh,
when I was in working for the government, and I was based in Washington D.C. Um, so I was, as far as you know, I was just gone all the time. But I was actually living in Alexandria, Virginia, and I had an office in a big building in Pentagon City. But but I had a team, and the team were all engineers. And I had industrial engineers, and then I had process engineers, people who would actually go and anyway. There's you want to talk about herding cats? There's man, there's everybody thought that they could improve the world if everybody would just listen to them.
yeah.
And we had one guy who, I kid you not, when he would drive, he wore a hockey helmet. And he wore a hockey helmet because he did research project on uh, on what you could do to make car crashes more survivable. And so he thought that wearing a hockey helmet while you drive would reduce your likelihood of.
It's gonna reduce your field of vision, is what it's gonna reduce.
Yeah, oh, trust me, I've had all those conversations with him. But it doesn't matter. I mean, we would literally go. We would be on a trip together, and he would put his hockey helmet in his baggage. So we'd be in a rental car, and he would wear his hockey helmet while we were driving to the airport or whatever.
That's I'm a big advocate of don't put shit out into the universe, and the universe won't try to tempt you with anything. So that's the kind of information that I would just internalize and be like, okay, don't ever think about this. Don't ever say anything. Don't give the universe any opportunity to use this against me.
And I mean, he was very eccentric, but everybody was that opinionated. They all were that opinionated about it. So we'd have these meetings because we would go to an airport, and we'd observe their operations, and then uh, we'd get together at night at the hotel, and we'd talk about what we thought we could do in order to improve their operations. And uh, uh, and my goodness, that I mean, the first like 2 or 3 nights would just be like just trying to hammer out. Okay, these are all wonderful ideas. What is the one or two things that we're going to do on this trip that we can actually convince these people is in their best interest?
What can we like actually dedicate our bandwidth to that is going to have the most impact for everybody? It's one of the people that I'm working with is very, very young and very idealistic, and she doesn't really know what she wants, but she certainly knows what she doesn't want. And she has this whole idea of giving away her business because, it's just her time. And I'm like, I get that. I understand that. But what you're talking about is working for free, and that's not really a sustainable option. So, this is what the whole conversation is how can I make this, one, sustainable, two, scalable, three, more profitable. And you working for free for everybody does the complete opposite of everything that I'm trying to accomplish for you. So
There's
yeah, I'm just blown away at the idea of, now I get how difficult I am to work with.
And it's funny, there's people will be like, "Oh man, I've got this wonderful idea for a nonprofit." They say they want to do. It's like, okay, if you want to do a nonprofit, that's admirable, and hopefully you can be successful at it. But if you think that operating a nonprofit is synonymous with working for free, you're not going to operate a nonprofit for
Yep.
very long.
Yep. Yeah. There's the thing. You don't have to make a profit, but you do have to make money
That's exactly
at
right.
some point.
So the salary of the person running the organization is not profit; it's an expense.
Right. Right. Um, what are you drinking today?
Today I am drinking dun 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 the Triple Palm IPA. It's a triple hopped IPA. Very nice.
I've got the athletic hazy. So
Yeah, I've got some of those. So funny when I open up my refrigerator, I look like a college student because my refrigerator is filled with beer, but it's all non-alcoholic.
So I got that Polaroid camera, and you're supposed to store the film in the fridge. So that way the chemicals are at a correct temperature to preserve the life of them. So we wound up getting this little mini fridge for the kitchen, and I only have a little bit of film, but it's enough. Like, when I say a little bit, I mean I have like 48 boxes of Polaroid film that I have right now, and that's down from the 70 some odd boxes that I had. I have this huge wall of Polaroids at the shop right now. It's kind of fun. But the I needed to have a place to put these Polaroids that wasn't the fridge that had all of our food because it was taking up enough space. So I went on Facebook Marketplace, got an old wine fridge that someone had for a really, really good price, and realized, well, this thing is empty. I can put all my beer in here. So now I have like a dedicated beer fridge, and it's fantastic because I've never really needed to have a kegerator like you used to have. But now I can have my dedicated beer fridge, and it's got all my hop water too.
That that kegerator was probably one of the worst decisions that I ever made. Because there's I mean there's because I was drinking alcoholic beer obviously at the time.
That was the best decision for that brewery though. Like that, oh yeah, you supply all the parts, we'll put it together for you. Yeah, you can get our kegs directly from us.
Yeah, and I was there's you man, my alcohol consumption went like through the roof. Because you're like, oh, you're out in the garage. You're like, oh, I'm just gonna get a half a beer, and oh man, I ended up giving it away to the neighbor. I was like, I got to get rid of this thing because it's it's like you make almost all your dietary decisions at the grocery store.
That's well, that was the whole thing about like when I was drinking, it was always just, this is good. One more is still good. But then like at the height of it, I was drinking good whiskey, and I think my average bottle was like a Glenlivet 18 year or a Balvenie Doublewood. So it's usually between 70, $80 a bottle. And, I'm going through three fingers of whiskey a night. It's like, it's really good. A little bit more will be a little bit, is pretty good too. And the nice thing about NAs is like after one, maybe I want a second one, but after the second one, I'm like, I'm done. I'm good right now. I don't need to have any more because I'm just empty calories at this point.
There's a and boy, I tell you, I was reading an article. I can't remember what magazine it was in. About it's like the top whiskeys in various categories. So like uh, single batch whiskey, single barrel whiskey, aged over 11 years, aged 1 to 10 years. All these different categories. So it's like the Academy Award of whiskey. So I'm reading through it, and I'm like, I'm like a dog, because I tell you, man,
I don't miss alcohol in general. I miss whiskey. Like
I
that's
do. I'm the same way.
yeah.
Whiskey is, and it's like, I would go to, uh, uh, I mean, I like whiskey completely neat, no ice, and I would even get a candle and use a candle to warm up the glass as I'm going along, so that but it's got so much flavor and so much aroma, and drinking whiskey it's such a sensory experience, because it's like you get the flavor, but your mouth burns and your throat
Yep.
burns, and
And the
the
aromatics come through the back of your nose and you
yeah,
like
so you're smelling it
exhale
from the
it
front
out.
and the back, because you're
Yep.
smelling what's the vapors that are coming in your throat. It's like it is such yeah. So I love whiskey. And I've never understood why people do shots of whiskey
Yeah.
and they like throw it back. It's like,
Yeah.
dude, that was 45 minutes worth of whiskey right there.
It's so I had a buddy in town that when I first met him, it was in the punk rock community and he was straight edge. So straight edge community was like no drugs, no alcohol, no gods, no masters, like the like hardcore dudes. And I used to drunk dial him all the time during my first marriage. And I remember one night he had to get surgery and he was high on painkillers and he calls me high as the day is long and he's like, "Hey man, I figured of all the people that I could call, you're the one who'd appreciate this the most." So we we have a great relationship. He just had his first kid a couple weeks ago. And on his 30th birthday a few years back, probably I think 8 years back. This was back when I was still working at the salon. It's a few weeks before his 30th birthday, and he comes in for his haircut and he's like, "Hey, so I think I understand what the three X's in straight edge actually mean." And I was like, "Okay, what's that?" And he's like, "Well, three X's is Roman numerals for 30. So I think 30 is when I'm actually allowed to start drinking. So I'm going to break edge at when I'm 30." And I was like, "Yes, yes, I'm so excited for you. I'm so happy for you. What are you going to do?" And he's like, "Well, I know how much you love whiskey. So can you introduce me to whiskey?" And I was like, "I get to plan it out. I get to I get to do what oh my God, that's awesome." So I have this like week and a half of planning out this guy's 30th birthday as how can I create a love letter to whiskey for somebody else? How can I get them to understand these are the essential do's and do nots of whiskey? So I basically bought a whole bunch of mini bottles. And I took him on a tour of whiskey. And I started him out with an 18-year-old Scotch. And I said, look, this is a good Scotch. This is not the best Scotch you're going to have tonight, but Scotch is very divisive in my community. You either absolutely love Scotch or you absolutely hate anybody that brings up Scotch because it just makes you think horrible things. So I'm going to introduce you to good Scotch. Not great Scotch, good Scotch. So started out with good Scotch, and that was his first palate. That was the baseline of everything. And I can't remember what it was. I want to say it was, I think it was Glenfiddich. It might have been something different. Uh, I I think it was a Glenfiddich 18 because I finished him off with a Glenlivet 21. So I went from the 18-year Scotch to Buffalo Trace, and I said, this is a $35 bottle of whiskey. If you ever go below this, you are doing it wrong. Or you are doing it for different reasons than what I'm trying to introduce you to. So please stick to at least this baseline, and this is now your next step. So then introduced him to a Canadian, a bourbon, and a blend. And then we finished it off with the Glenlivet 21. So I started him with good Scotch, went down to a baseline, gave him a little bit of a ride, and then I finished him off with this really nice 21-year Scotch that I really enjoy. And by the time that he got to the Scotch the second time, he understood the different complexities. And he's also drunk off of his ass at this point because it's his first time drinking. But he's now like he loves spirits, and he has a real appreciation for fine liquor and fine drinks, as opposed to the whole let's go get drunk and it's Friday night, let's go get wasted kind of mentality. So I'm really stoked that I at least got to impart that on him.
Yeah, there's something to the school of thought of parents introducing their teenage kids to really good liquor. Like really nice wine, really good whiskeys, because then they're they won't be the. It's too expensive for them to get drunk all the time.
Yeah.
There's
Well,
so they're they've got to work their way through the earnings rungs, and it's normally, and you've got to be at least 26, 28 years old before you can afford to have decent decent liquor.
so when I don't know if I've ever told you this story of when mom bought me my first bottle of alcohol. So I was 18, 18 or 19. I want to say I was eight. No, I was 19. And I had been reading a GQ and I saw an advertisement for Grey Goose. And it was like, okay, Grey Goose, that's that. And I'm a sucker for marketing. I love good marketing. So I tell mom, hey, can you go to the liquor store and buy me a bottle of Grey Goose? And when she comes back, she has this disgusted look on her face and says, that bottle was almost $40. I was like, I got a job. I'm not doing anything with money. Okay, here's $40. And in my mind, baseline, okay, alcohol costs $40. That's I have no context to what's at the store. That's what mom got at the store. That's okay. It's $40. So I had like vodka cranberries for the first few drinks, and they're good vodka cranberries because it's Grey Goose. So the first time after that I drank was it was a girl who worked at Walmart with mom. She worked back in the electronics section. I can't remember her name, but her and her husband had a house on the other side of town, and it was a house party at their house. And they were getting me drunk on green apple Zima, which just gross. Just absolutely gross. And the difference of not having a hangover because I had really good quality liquor at home and then going and getting this cheap, sugary, just bullshit and the headache that I had the day after, it just wasn't worth it. And I made a quick realization early on, like, okay, there's one of two costs. Uh, it's either $40 or it's the day after. And I way rather spend the $40 than the day after. So I just always lived in that space. And it was always like, okay, if I'm getting a bottle of whiskey, it's going to be probably around $70. Or if it's, a celebration account, I remember the day that my divorce paperwork came through and I went to the liquor store and I bought a bottle of Johnny Walker Blue Label, which is like a $350 bottle of whiskey at the time. And the lady behind the counter had asked me if I was celebrating anything. I was like, oh, yeah, I'm celebrating quite a bit today, actually.
I had the opposite experience being introduced to alcohol because I mean, I've talked about this before, but your grandma Pat at the time was, uh, I mean, she was she was a very active drunk, so she was drunk all the time, and I mean, if she wasn't at work, she was. There's a and so I was drinking whatever beer she had in the fridge, so it was like and like Mad Dog 2020 and Boone's Farm wine and like if she drank rum and she would come back from the liquor store with a handle, a half-gallon bottle of whatever is the shittiest, cheapest rum at the liquor store, and she would drink rum and Coke with limes in it. There's a and I don't know if you've ever had a rum and Coke, but it's probably one of the most disgusting drinks on the face of the planet. It's really, really
So
gross.
my very first drink ever, actually, I was trying to sneak mom used to keep rum in the top cabinet.
Yeah.
Uh and I was trying to sneak alcohol without you guys knowing. I think I was 17 and I was going to make a rum and coke because I figured, okay, it's easy. It's two things. It's rum and it's coke. How difficult can that be? So I put equal parts rum and coke in a drink. And then I had my first drink and I was like, oh, this is disgusting. Who'd ever drink a rum and coke?
But it's not better if you fix the 'cause Coke is so
You add a
sweet.
little bit more sugar and it's better.
Yeah, it's like whoa, man. There's and yeah, there's so the first time I ever had any alcohol that was of any good quality was when we went to Germany. And we lived
Yeah.
in Germany and we had the beer guy who would deliver beer to the house. And and I was like, "Oh man, this beer is delicious. It's so much better than the buckhorn beer I was drinking back at home." There's a and then by the time we got back to the States, the microbrew wave had started.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, because you got really big into Fat Tire when Fat Tire was kind of like still a small brewery in the Rocky Mountain region.
yeah, they're a Colorado beer, New Belgium brewery. There's but yeah, there's and again, it was just uh, all of a sudden because when I went to Germany, all American beer was like Budweiser and Coors Light and everything was like that. Labatt's and there's Schlitz, Miller beer, Michelob, all these. that's there's a but then when I got back from Germany, I was like, oh man. And I and I started drinking Heineken because it's like the only thing that I would remember. Um, but yes. So then what? And once the American beer industry really took off, which they now America's beers are on par with any beer anywhere in the
Yeah.
world.
Yeah.
There's a
Now, if just the NA community in Idaho could catch up, that would be wonderful.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
and
you know,
yeah,
it's one of the things that there's more companies that are brewing NA. And I think I'll be honest, I think it's going to take off because that's one of the things that um Generation Alpha
they don't
um
drink as much as millennials.
yeah,
And millennials, as we're aging, we're drinking less and less.
yeah,
Uh,
and there's and the boomers, we have been the most drug uh you know dazed generation from the very beginning. There's
you're
uh
you're fairly sedated.
there's man there's
It's those of you that aren't sedated that are the ones that we're concerned about.
I mean it's so funny because like it's such a foreign concept, but like when I was in high school there was always a smoking area at the high school
Yeah. Yeah,
because
and there was just those kids that were out at the smokers area.
yeah, and like now there's I mean if a kid lit up a cigarette on a school campus, they'd probably be, expelled from school for forever.
Well, that's Boise had made smoking outside of restaurants within 25 foot of the entrance illegal a handful of years ago. And the whole city had kind of revolted about it. And then, time changed and people forgot about it. And then that was just the norm. And now there's not nearly as much smoking in public spaces as there used to be. And it's funny because anytime that I smell cigarettes, I'm just like, smells like grandma. Like, what's going on right now?
There's yeah, it's so funny there because she would go out on the porch in the middle of the winter, freezing cold, and
Oxygen, cigarette, oxygen, cigarette.
she would be smoking a cigarette while she's on her oxygen. And it was so cold. We had got her a patio heater that was like this propane thing. So she's like on her oxygen next to this massive open flame, smoking her cigarettes. And there's, and, but the thing that got her was a heart attack, I mean, there's,
She's like, I don't care what you think, God, I go on my terms.
there's I used to remember she would make some toast. So she's gonna have toast for breakfast. And so you're like, oh, okay, you can have some toast. And she would use like half a stick of butter on 4 pieces of toast. And it was
Yep.
like it looked like there was icing on a cake on her pieces of toast. They were so thick with butter.
Well, and she was the one that would teach me and Brad to put like cinnamon and brown sugar on the toast. It's like this is the least healthy thing that you can do, but I gotta imagine that's from the time where she was working the diner.
Yeah, and I used to have that for breakfast all the time. So I would make cinnamon toast for breakfast. Uh, there's because I mean there's no real difference between that and a Pop-Tart. It's probably better than a
No,
Pop-Tart.
no, like at least it's just butter.
Do they even have Pop-Tarts now?
Oh, oh, yes. Oh, now, do I eat Pop-Tarts? No, I don't currently eat Pop-Tarts, but I do know that Pop-Tarts have some exciting colors and flavors and varieties anytime that I'm walking down that aisle.
Yeah,
Um,
I wonder what RFK Jr. is going to do about Pop-Tarts.
I don't know. Maybe good things. Maybe good things. That's the that guy is a crazy person who has a couple good agendas that I'm like, yeah, I want to see you successful in some things. Shut up about other things.
Yeah, there's and I mean I'm one of the so Lindsey Graham had uh a video clip that was out this week, I think on Forbes. But the there was a hearing about defunding USAID, and the congressional representatives, the senators in his case, were complaining about cuts to USAID, and he's like, "You guys ruined this." It's like, and so then he started going through it. It's like we spent $4 million on buying uh uh, uh you know just all this crazy stuff. There's that we shouldn't be doing spending research money on um I mean, for our foreign policy, we shouldn't be spending, $4 million on sex change operations for people on some island somewhere.
Right.
Um, which regardless of what you think about you know um, gender
If it's
transitioning,
happening, then it should not be being happening with government money.
yeah, and it just poisons the well, so that people are like, we have to get rid of the program, because if we have the program, people are going to abuse it, and 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 you can't argue with it, because that's exactly what we did. We were spending billions of dollars on things that we shouldn't have been spending that money on.
Um, so I was what were we just talking about here? Oh, I had something went away. So we were talking about RFK, and you had mentioned that he was grilling people. What was it that he was saying specifically that they were spending the money on outside of that, or like what was going on with this?
There's it's kind of the same thing with the research that HHS was doing.
Okay.
Um, HHS started doing research, particularly under the Biden administration, um, and and on diversity studies. So we're spending and see, here's the thing: America has always been um, uh, a very diverse country from the very beginning. We were there's we had uh, it was mostly people coming from Europe, but and there's I got to be careful the way that I say this. There's there's slavery was horrible. It was absolutely horrible, and there's no excuse for it. It should have never happened. It was disgusting. Um, but we have a today we have a vibrant African American community, a black community in the U.S. that has all these rich um, cultural earmarks. So like there's the it's there's a in my world, uh the black church in America is a completely different church than the white church in America. Totally
One
different
of
church.
the most interesting times. So the chaplain on base in Hawaii, they would do the different types of services, and there were the different Southern Baptist churches, and there was the Black Southern Baptist service that would happen, and we had gone, and we were the one. I think there was like us and maybe one other white family in this entire service. and it was a completely different celebration of their faith than like anything I had ever been to before.
But when you think of how the black church in America began, um, you know, there's there's a lot of it was they were forced into Christianity um, by their slave masters, and but they would sneak out and they would try to incorporate religious aspects or at least cultural aspects of their homeland into their Christian worship. So black church music began with syncopation and beats and clapping and rhythm and things that you could do. You could sneak out and go into the woods and you could have a service, and nobody had to have any instruments because everybody could clap and beatbox and and so but it was a very it,
You were the instrument, and that's kind of the whole embodiment of it.
yeah, but then the whole theology of it. So like uh I mean, slave masters were literally not rewriting, but they were editing the Bible, and they had versions of the Bible that that only included uh, obedience passages. the The Book of Exodus was right out forbidden. No, Philemon would never be talked about. So there's anything that would give some kind of sense of a yearning for freedom or a desire for justice uh, was was cut out of the Bible. So uh, so um, so the theology developed in this uh, in this in this obedience and suffering mode. So a lot of it's like um, hey, this is my cross, and I've got to bear it. So there's a lot of suffering in the theology of the black church. And the reason that that suffering is in their theology is because that's the only thing they had in their Bible. There's because white slave masters didn't want to give any scriptures that would make them
Hopeful.
hopeful. Yeah, and I mean, how horrible is that? I mean, there's and how can you? There's yeah. So it's yeah. But anyway, my whole point in that was uh I don't even know what the point I was making because I started getting on. I forget what we were talking about. It.
and and this is why the struggle between talking between generations is so funny because we go on rants and then we just completely forget where we're going with it. Uh, but I completely acknowledge that I was going on a rant and I got derailed, and then it followed up by you going on a rant and then getting derailed, which means we should segue over into a completely different topic altogether,
Supper talk.
and we're gonna have some table topic conversations. So, for those of you who listen to us on a regular basis, you'll be used to this. For those of you who are new, hello. Thank you for joining us. We do table topics. It's a card game that is a conversation starter, and we're going through the family dinner box. So, this question is, what makes you feel proud of yourself?
Um, yeah, for me, the singular event that makes me the most proud of myself is is Grenada, and I know that that's a long time ago. Um, but I mean, we rescued hundreds of kids. They're doctors now. They've got, they've got families, um and I mean, sure, we don't know what would have happened had we not gone in, but we did go in, and I will never ever ever forget the look on those medical students' face when they realized that they were safe, they were going home, and they didn't have to worry about dying on a little island in the middle of uh, the uh, uh, well, off the coast of South America.
So I don't think we've ever actually like talked about this story on the podcast. Is that a story that you want to talk about at all?
Sure, there's in October of 1983, there was uh, uh, an island near Barbados called Grenada, and there's um, it had, and it still has, a medical school on it called St. George's, I believe. Um, but anyway, so it has an American medical school there, and they it was a communist government. It was originally a member uh, of the British Crown, so it was a a part of the English uh, uh, col- colonies, and but they had a coup, and the this socialist by the name of oh dang, I can't remember his name. Maurice Bishop uh, was the uh, uh, was the prime minister, and so he was a communist. He was allied with Cuba, and Cuba was helping them build an airfield. Um, and it was clearly power projection in our hemisphere because I mean, it's there wasn't anything except for spice trade on the island, and they were building a very, very large airstrip. So it got on Ronald Reagan's plate. He didn't like it. He was looking for some way of interrupting that. Um, but then the deputy prime minister was a guy by the name of Bernard Cord, and when Bishop was outside of the country, he staged a coup. And Bishop went back and was trying to right the coup, and basically Cord lined him up. There's a lot of different versions of how it happened, but the bottom line is uh, they murdered the prime minister and a bunch of his cabinet ministers, um, and they started a massacre, shooting machine guns into crowds of civilians, just really, really bad things going on the island. And there were hundreds of American medical students. I've heard a couple different numbers. I don't know the total number. I've heard like 460 some odd, and then I heard 600 plus. So I don't know what the total number of students was, and that's not surprising because when we got there, so the um, uh, Ronald Reagan was asked by members of the Organization of American States to get involved and stop the coup because they thought that it was going to expand. So he said, "Okay, I will," and he got together a task force, and my part of the task force was both of the Ranger battalions. At the time, there were only two Ranger battalions, First and Second Battalion, and they got together. It was the first time that we had ever worked together, and did an airborne assault onto um, this airfield that they were building. Well, it was already built, but the airport was still being built. So really dramatic. very low 500-foot parachute drop. Uh, and while the drop was going on, there was anti-aircraft fire. So, guys are coming down in parachutes with tracer rounds going past them. Um, and five guys from my battalion died on that initial insertion. They didn't die on the, like getting shot on the way down to the ground, but during the initial operation trying to seize the airfield itself. Five guys from my battalion died. Now I wasn't on that operation. I was there during that operation, but my company, Charlie Company, from First Ranger Battalion, was the only one who was cut off, and we were part of a task force that was basically the exact same task force um, that we used during Operation Eagle Claw, which was the the effort to rescue American embassy staff that were being held hostage in Iran in 1979 after the Iranian Islamic Revolution. So we were organized the same way. So we went up to Fort Bragg, and we were with parts of the Joint Special Operations Command. It was uh, anyway. So our part of the mission was helping what everybody calls now Delta Force with certain aspects of their operation. So that's what we did on the first day, and but then and it was a bad day. I mean, it was a bad day. We had no idea that they were going to have that air defense. We lost several helicopters on that first day. Um, the Delta Force guys had a Black Hawk filled with operators get shot down. Um, Everybody thought that they were all dead, but it turned out they weren't. And So very daring rescue of those guys. Ended up being just one pilot was died in that crash. Um, but then uh, so the once we seized the airfield, we went to what was called True Blue Campus, which was the main campus, and that's where we thought all the medical students were. So we seized the airfield, um, uh, seized the campus, and rescued the Americans that were there. Got them back to the airfield, and when we got them back to the airfield, they're like, "Well, where's the rest of us?" And we're like, "Well, what do you mean the rest of us?" And they're like, "Well, there's other campuses here on the island." So, uh, so then, I mean, we didn't know that these hundreds of students were broken into campuses all across the island.
So your
So this,
intelligence was completely underprepared for getting you guys set up for success.
yeah, yeah, it was. There's so So the the hostage rescue attempt in Iran was a failure of a mission. Nothing. We weren't successful at anything, and and we realized that we weren't prepared uh, to conduct those kinds of operations. But we didn't really learn that much because here we are 4 years later, and we're trying to do basically the same thing, just in a different place. Rather than Iran, we're doing it in Grenada, and the same things. I mean, the same things. We weren't able to talk with, uh, we needed naval gunfire because that's all our initial artillery support was from the Navy, but we couldn't talk to the Navy. So there's um, and we had no intelligence, no map, no idea that there was, uh, uh, um, air defense capacities on the ground, so we're losing aircraft left and right. Um, and and if there's anything that was, well, there were a couple things. One, um, it cost us a lot of people. There was a lot of guys who died during the first 3 days of that operation, and uh, and they shouldn't have. I mean, we were invading Grenada, for crying out loud. We should have been prepared to take that nation. I mean, it shouldn't have.
Easily, yeah.
We should have had the whole thing, in a couple days at most. But there's, but the planning was horrible, and the command and control was horrible, and but in the midst of all of that bullshit, we were successful. And every time something fell apart, and this is one of the reasons why I'm so proud of it. Every time something fell apart, we were like, oh, okay. Nobody was like, oh, well, we're not going to be able to do this. We're like, okay, well, what are we going to do now? And there's so we were we were successful in rescuing all the American medical students. We were successful in seizing the airfield. We were um, successful in rescuing um, uh, political prisoners. Um, so there was a lot of things that happened that 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 if you would have looked at them, and if you realize how many people were died and were wounded as part of those operations, you wouldn't have thought that they would have been so successful. But we were absolutely successful in everything we set out to do, which was an amazing feat. And then the second thing that we did is the Special Operations Command that exists today exists because of that operation. They were like, okay, we've got to figure out how to do this. We've got to get better at conducting um, joint special operations missions. So, so the Ranger Regiment was formed there. So we had, instead of just having two completely independent battalions, one on each coast, we had three Ranger battalions that were part of an integrated headquarters. Um, and then when we invaded Panama, uh, it was a regimental operation under a unified command. We were integrated with other members of the special operations community. We could talk to everybody. Everybody was going. So everything that needed get
So
fixed.
so your clusterfuck was the one that was so fucked that they needed to fix it.
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's exactly right. And there's so I every time I look at the folks in the special operations community today, particularly the guys in the Ranger Regiment, I'm like, you know what, man, I am so glad that that we went through what we went through, because because it was such a clusterfuck that they had to fix it. There was
Yeah.
no way that they could allow that to continue, um, and that's what happened. So we ended up with the U.S. Army Special Operations Command. We ended up with the Ranger Regiment. We ended up with um, uh, there's at the time we were the aviation assets we were using was called Task Force 160, and I mean it was like the super secret organization that we wouldn't even admit existed, and now it's the 160th Special Operations Regiment. So there's uh, their motto is Night Stalkers don't quit. They're the Night Stalkers, and these guys are, yeah. So we've got these aviation capabilities. We've got special operations capabilities that have no no peer, but not only do they not have any peer, but we have exported that level. So what we call tier one and tier two level units. Um, Now there are other countries that have special operations forces that are able to function in the same way that they wouldn't be able to if we hadn't developed those capabilities first. So yeah, that's easily the hands down the thing that makes me the most proud is when I just, I mean, I remember, the guys who were in my unit, and what happened over the and it was just a few days. I mean, it was literally just a few days we were on the island. And uh and uh yeah, and like on day 3, I was sliced off to the Second Ranger Battalion to do an air mobile raid, a helicopter raid into a into some barracks at called Calvigny. And I think it was 3. We lost 3 birds on the first lift. Um, One bird crashed, 2 more birds crashed into the bird that crashed, and so so we're doing a raid on this barracks, um, and 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 we've got just like all kinds of people who are really fucked up because they were in helicopters that crashed. So we're trying to get all those people out. Really, really heroic um, actions, and this is long before uh, uh, you know we had uh, the kind of medical capacity that that is available to special operations units
It
now.
would be considered incredibly rudimentary and very, very archaic to what's available today.
Yeah, but it's one of the things that we were so far in front of everybody else because
Hmm.
I mean, there's, like now it's not a big deal for, I mean, every squad in every infantry company, uh, has what they call combat lifesavers, and they're able to put IV fluids into people. That was unheard of at the time, but everybody in my platoon was knew how to give IVs. We used to practice giving IVs to each other all the time because there's it's just a volume issue. When you start bleeding a lot, you need to get fluids into the person's veins so that their blood pressure doesn't drop catastrophically. So anyway, there was so many things that went wrong, and we learned so much from it's. This will be a great transition to our later conversation on Elon Musk. It's like Elon Musk keeps crashing rockets, and he figures that crashing rockets is how you learn how to successfully land rockets. And he's done it better than anybody else. But we were crashing rockets, and we learned a lot, and we're much better before for it.
Yeah,
So
it's just for him it's millions of dollars, and for when you guys are in risk, it's people's lives. So potato potato.
well, it'll definitely be lives if people decide to put themselves into that uh stainless steel death trap.
So we were after we had that initial conversation about ectogenesis, I was asking everyone that came into the shop, like, okay, would you go to Mars? And everyone said the exact same thing, hell no. Uh, and I'm the only person that I know that not only would I, but I have many years ago I already signed up for a company that was looking for people who would be willing to volunteer for the one-way trip, and I would. Yeah, that's an exciting way to die. Um, and frankly, that's kind of what I'm looking for in life. I'm either looking for really old age and passing silently in my sleep, but you never know if that's going to be the case. So exciting death seems way more fun, and going on a rocket ship to space to see what a planet that has zero light pollution. Yeah, I would 100% be the babysitter of all of the first generation Martians. I have no problem with that. And I can imagine that if I was on one of the first like 5 or 6 that has the payload capacity, that's a new payload capacity, that's going to be a learning opportunity for them, and I don't want to be part of the learning opportunities. I want to be a couple generations, iterations down the line. Uh, but yeah, those first couple of payloads, that might be a big oopsie.
Yeah, and there's I it's we were talking beforehand. There's what I call Musk's folly now is Musk's Martian martini. Because we were talking about getting drunk, and Elon Musk is drunk on Mars. He is totally drunk on Mars. You know, stumbling drunk, babbling incoherently about because it's like okay, he wants to have a million person colony on Mars. Um, well, that means you've got to have some kind of economy that that makes that society sustainable. So there's and if you just there's so like going to Mars, you can only go like every couple of years, every 2 3 years. There's a because it's got this elliptical orbit,
See,
so it's
and
just
I think you keep focusing on the practicalities of it, and we need to really just recognize what are the goals of a narcissist.
yeah
And outside of what are the goals of a narcissist, what are the goals of a narcissist who has seemingly limitless money? Because like if the only thing that stops any probability from happening is capital, okay, well this guy has won the capital race and he has like for every second that he is spending thousands of dollars, he is making thousands more. So like he is only on upward trajectory, and every technology that he's building is supporting other technologies that he's building. So this guy, in my opinion, it has nothing to do with how long is it going to take? It's how much time do I have to be able to start my game of The Sims? And I genuinely think that that's what his goal is, because you can be Donald Trump level narcissist and have a country that's excited about you. But if you're the guy that colonizes a planet, you are immortalized as a god on that planet for all time moving forward. You are the person who brought life to Mars. And you can kind of shape what that narrative looks like if you control the first generation of people that are on Mars. So I think that he is recognizing that he has this whole platform and way of communicating to people, that there are Musk devotees. There are people who are all in for Musk. I'm not one of them. Uh, and there, while I would be the person that would go to Mars because, yeah, that's an exciting way to die, and I think that the spirit of exploration is one of the few things that there's spaces for us to be able to still explore. Most of Earth has been explored. So you either have the depths of the ocean or outer space. So if outer space is the option, yeah, I want to die like that. But I think the majority of the people that are going to follow him are his devotees. And if you have your devotees going to your planet that you occupy and you get to control the narrative of people that already like you, man, like what that does to that guy's ego if he uploads his consciousness to the cloud.
yeah and but the thing is there's so it's like I use Twitter as an example. So he's got Twitter, and he uses Twitter as a bit of an echo chamber and as a way of getting free marketing for his products and his ideas. Um, but as social media channels go, Twitter's pretty small when you compare it to Facebook, when you compare it to Instagram, when you compare it to uh, you know um, There, so so it's pretty small, and it's it's it and it's a small community of Musk devotees. Pretty much everybody on Twitter is a Musk devotee. So how many of those people are going to actually be willing to put their own ass on the line to go to Mars? And so like um and landing on Mars is just one part, because if you don't want to die on Mars, if you want to like go to Mars and then come back, then you've got to go to Mars.
Oh,
You've
that's
got to
not an option. Yeah. Like
that's
that's if you think that that's going to be presented as an option, that's not. And that's where I'm okay with it. I know that it's a one-way trip.
but it's so how does that build an economy to where uh to where you know you're providing a benefit for the people of Earth. So like if I'll use the moon as an example, right? So NASA, it's so funny. NASA's like, yeah, that Mars thing is pretty interesting, but we're working on Artemis. So NASA has been laser focused on Artemis. We're going back to the moon, and and
2028, right?
well, I think there's it was supposed to be this year. I think it's been pushed back to 2028. But see, here's the thing. So like China already has established operations on the opposite side of the moon. So the moon, the orbits, the way that the moon rotates around the planet is pretty interesting because it's in a static. So we're always seeing the same side of
Yep.
the moon. It's not spinning so that we see the whole thing. So so if you go to the other side of it, you can do things and nobody else is going to know unless we have some way of seeing onto that far side, which we basically do not have right now. So now China has the capacity to do whatever it wants on the far side of the moon without the United States knowing what's going on. They've already announced a plan that I believe is by 2030 they're going to have a functioning nuclear reactor that they're building in cooperation with the Russians on the far side of the moon. So they're going to have a nuclear reactor providing power, presumably for mining operations, research operations, the construction and conduct of intelligence gathering operations on the far side of the moon, which is like the most clever, secretive place to get. And we're like not even like trying to do anything about it beyond Artemis. And Musk is creating this distraction. He's like, oh no, don't go to the moon, go to Mars, where there's nothing there. So like we know that the moon has massive stores of helium-3, which can be
We're
used
getting in or getting to a very low amount of, which you need for medical equipment.
and for fusion power generation. Nuclear fusion operations needs helium-3. There's gold there. There's lithium there. There's all these things that are on the moon. And like you can go you there's a launch window to go to the moon every month. It only takes a few days to get there. So, you can, if you've ever seen the way that uh oil rigs conduct their operations. So they have teams of people that go out there and they'll be out there for 9 months and then they come back.
Yep.
Out there for 9 months and then they come back. Out there for 9 months, then they come back. And while they're out there, they're like working all the time. They're either working or sleeping or eating, but there's no, I mean,
But
they're
they
on the
make
mid.
good money because they're working all the time and they get a ton of overtime and it's a high labor job that has a high return. Um and I can see where you're coming from here, where there's more immediate value to Earth, and that's your argument is what value does going to Mars provide Earth? And I don't necessarily think that, again, I don't think that's the point of it. I don't think it's supposed to provide Earth any value. And it's to the one extent why I'm glad that NASA is focused on projects that are going to benefit our nation. But like that's where our money should go. So if some, egotistical billionaire who's on the verge of becoming a trillionaire wants to use all of his money to, deep seed consciousness onto the galaxy, I don't think there's anything wrong with that actually. Like uh, cool. Don't fuck with my tax dollars, but do it. Because some that does need to happen. Like arguably for the species, not looking at Earth, but if you're trying to think about the development of types of civilizations that are going to be able to get past Fermi's paradox and the Great Barrier, we need to have backup plans for consciousness. We need to be able to have multiple waypoints along the path that is ultimately going to be a big journey getting outside of the galaxy. Like if we're going to get past the pull of the sun, and going past the outer realms of Jupiter, and is it the Kuiper belt? Is that what it's called?
I always call it Kuiper.
The Kuiper Belt. Yeah, yeah, yeah. If you're like, that's not going to be a short journey. So being able to have base stations along the way and being able to have refueling stations along the way, that makes sense. And if somebody wants to privatize, start that path so that way it can eventually be something that maybe world nations recognize a century down the line, cool. Don't fuck with my tax dollars. Go out and do that.
Yeah, and the notion that somehow going to Mars is going to make us as a species last longer, there's maybe a little bit, and there maybe I don't think that there's uh, any real evidence that would indicate that going to Mars would make humans more likely to survive.
But that's the thing is I don't think that when I listen to him talk about it, I don't think he's concerned about humans surviving as much as the torch of consciousness continuing on. And this was the thing that we had talked about with the ectogenesis episode. Like ultimately, they're a couple generations away from not being human anymore. Gravity is going to affect them differently. The radiation in space is going to affect them differently. Like they will effectively become whatever that pathway leads them on to being. So I don't really think that we can think about what it is that Elon is doing is preserving humanity in a way that we know, as much as it's trying to take the consciousness that we have and allowing it to progress in whatever fashion it's going to progress as, and allowing us as the seed of consciousness actually spreading forth.
There's but the same expanding sun that is going to boil our oceans and bake our planet um, is is not going to make Mars any more hospitable
Okay, so
than it.
this is the exact same argument that you texted me about that you had me give to my AI. And my AI is like, well, if you're just doing it just because, it doesn't really matter. Like, your argument is saying we're all going to die eventually. We're going to have a solar collapse of our galaxy. So there's no point in going out and seeking something else anyways. And I disagree. I think that the reason that I want to have an exciting death is because we should be adventurers and we should go out and explore and we should go out and find more things to allow future generations to be a part of as well, regardless regardless of knowing that there's going to be some kind of demise along that path.
But if you look at what has historically driven our exploration, um, it's always been economy. We move where the animals are. You know, early on, we moved wherever the animals were moving. We moved there because we needed the animals in order to live, because we hunted them and we ate them. We 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 uh you know boarded ships, and and there's and fared across a very hostile ocean to find new land, because we wanted to build new companies and new we wanted to exploit the new land that we found. So I think that we would be wise to listen to that. All right. So like the likelihood that we go to Mars and find something on Mars that's going to turn a profit is really, 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 really low. Very low.
Okay, fair. But what we have now is the capability to synthetically grow sustainable food. And we can prove that we can do that in a zero gravity environment because the ISS has had lettuce growing in space, which has been really fascinating to see the developments in that. So we can have sustainable growth that doesn't require any farming or actual work, so you don't necessarily need to have the economy in that because it's sustainable. You now have the ability to have um, fuel potentially be significantly more sustainable because of how close we are to fusion reaction being a viable fuel source. And especially once we get to the point of AGI or ASI paired with quantum computing, the physics is going to get figured out so quickly that that will become the sustainable option. So,
Say it.
oh, go ahead.
Well, as soon as you mentioned quantum computing, because that's kind of where I land is. So if we want to uh, survive, and whether we want to survive as consciousness, or if we want to survive like actually survive as a species, then then uh, then interplanetary travel is is not going to cut it. It's just there's this there's we are the most hospitable place in the entire solar system, and as far as we know, we're the most hospitable place in all of the galaxy. So the if we're going to try and become explorers that matter, then the kind of travel that we need to do is intergalactic travel, not interplanetary. And where do those opportunities lie? Those opportunities lie at the boundaries of physics, where where uh, where uh, where the unknowns of the universe are unfolding all around us. So, so you know, the superposition used to be a theory. Superposition is now discovered reality, that particles can exist in two places at the same time. So, so as so what I think we need to be focusing on is the exploration of of physical realities, meaning physics as in quantum, because what happens in the quantum and the very, very small is happening in the astro, the very, very large. And it's because, like, our sun is a massive fusion center. And the reason that it's a fusion center is because it's got all this mass that compresses it down, so that the realities at the very, very smallest level are what is causing the sun to exist. So if we could figure out how to harness literally the power of the sun, now we've got energy that is way beyond, I mean, you know, so many uh, uh, levels of magnitude in excess of what we've got right now. And if we can figure out, that the entire universe appears to be made up of three different types of waves and matter. So there's matter, everything that is material, but then there's this powerful nuclear force, the weak nuclear force, and gravity. So there's these forces that exist, um, and if we can figure those waves out, how can we travel using either the powerful nuclear or the powerful nuclear force or the weak nuclear force? How can we use those forces to travel not just from here to Mars, but from here to Andromeda, from here to and do those things in such a way that we don't have to worry about running into things between here and there.
Yeah. And be able to go to exoplanets like Kepler 22b and be able to actually establish homeworlds on habitable places that we know to be habitable. And I don't disagree with that. And I think that the argument that I would still make towards the efforts of crawling when we know that we need to run is that, the in the physics that we're aware of, what you're talking about is kind of referenced with like a Dyson sphere and being able to have some kind of massive object that is encompassing the sun so that way you can use the sun's energy as like an engine. And in theory, in quantum theory, you should be able to reduce the mass so that way you can essentially create a black hole, which is a much smaller entity, and you should be able to contain that. But I think that in a practical sense, we need to be able to have enough physical material to be able to contain the sun, and that is generations down the line, even with quantum computing, unless that legitimately does figure out the physics problem, which that's the whole point of quantum computing is it should figure out the physics problem. And if it does, well, then we're all in for a good future and we can all stop worrying and our podcast doesn't need to continue trying to save the world. Um, because
Because we
we've
can save
figured out
whatever the next world is.
yeah, we got it. It's better. Um, but I think that you are gonna wind up needing to find desolated planets because at some point, if we mine all of the material off of the moon, that's gonna have a direct impact on the lunar cycle of the oceans, which will impact Earth. So there is going to be a detriment to Earth if we mine away the moon. So being able to mine other planets that are abandoned planets could potentially have that economic value that will eventually lead us to a place where we can have enough mined materials to create something where the energy of the sun could be used as an engine to get us into intergalactic travel. But I still think that it's kind of we're watching the infant fall over and bash its head on the side of the table every time one of his rockets explode. But at some point, that thing's going to take strides. And at some point, it's going to be a lot more valuable than what we're seeing it to be right now.
And that's when you mentioned the a Dyson sphere, there's because I'm like, okay, yeah, we uh it would be very beneficial for us to be able to have a Dyson sphere.
Dyson sphere, yeah.
Dyson sphere, yeah. There's that we can use to keep our species alive and travel around in our solar system. But since building a Dyson sphere is going to be way, way out in the future, you know what we've got right next to us that is the next best thing to a Dyson sphere? The moon. It's a moon. It's got gravity, but it's got very, very low gravity. So if we if we mine things on the moon and we're going to use those as materials to construct things in space, it's way easier to launch things from the moon into space than it is from uh, Earth into space. And there's you know uh, launching things from Mars into space is now we got to get to Mars. We've got to somehow create a workforce that is large enough to get the materials off of Mars that we can use in order to construct things. So we're going to have to find iron ore. We're going to have to find nickel. We're going to have to find all these things on Mars. When when the uh, the moon's like right there, and it's got all these things. And if we need resources that aren't on the moon, we mentioned the Kuiper Belt earlier, grab a an asteroid and pull it into the proximity of the moon, and we can easily build space stations that are orbiting the moon, and we can keep workforces going. We can just keep people going there. And like if 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 you send if you're like we mentioned this when we were talking about the ectogenesis. So like every 2 3 years we can go to Mars. So we're going to have to maximize those. So we're going to we're not going to send one starship. We're going to have a bank of 30 starships filled with people ready to go to Mars in order to populate it. Well, if something happens to any of those starships, they're just dead. There's no they have to be able to fix everything on their own because they can't survive it. There's I mean we had a massive accident on I think it was Apollo 12, wasn't it? When whatever the movie was about,
Oh,
Apollo
Apollo
12,
13.
Apollo 13, yeah. There's uh where like the the spaceship that they were on was no longer working, and they had to figure out how to fix it. But because they didn't have to fix it and like live in it for for I was just looking at uh a round trip to the moon and back. It can be done in a month. You can go to the moon and back in a month. We did it on Apollo. To go to Mars and back, it's 3 years. There's
So, one of the other things that when you had mentioned how do you get people to go to Mars? Because one, it's going to be a one-way trip. Two, what's the cost involved with relocating yourself to Mars? I think that that's the incentive. I think getting a new chance at life, get a free one-way ticket to get a new opportunity, that's a pretty big sell for a lot of people, I would imagine. If you have no job and you have no family support structure, and there's some rich guy who's offering you a free one-way trip to a new life.
yeah, but I mean that's a romantic notion that I think I think you might be able to sell some people on. If you very well might be able to sell some people on for the first trip. There's but as soon as people realize that it's not that romantic. It's like there's I'm surprised that they haven't done any like I think they just did one it was like a war movie that was World War III breaks out between the
Oh,
Russian
Civil War?
yeah uh so the people up on the space station are watching this war break out down on Earth. And so, like, both the Russians and the Americans are getting coded messages from their government that they can't trust the others. And there's this big drama on the space, on the space station. There's, but, and it's interesting. I just, there's so like the new Pope. I'm Catholic, so I got to bring it to the new Pope, right? There's, he's the reason that he took the name Leo is to associate himself with Leo the 13th, who there's a lot of interesting things about Leo the 13th, but one of the interesting things is he was really the the moral force, the driving moral force that led to anti-child labor laws and uh, unionization in countries, so that we're not putting 1,000 people on an elevator built for 10, and 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 making sure that people at that time, at the turn of the 20th century, um, weren't abandoning their humanity as they embraced the Industrial Revolution. And Leo the 14th, the current pope, he's saying the same thing about AI. He's like, there's this transition that's going to take place because of AI and because of humanoid robots and because of self-driving cars and because of all these other things. We have to remember that we are still humans, we that every single one of us has value, and and we're not resources to be exploited, um, so that one person can gain profit. And I would argue that that uh, trying to figure out how to use the resources of the moon in ways that benefit humanity is a worthwhile exploration, because it's a worthwhile exploration that sees humans as inherently valuable, and um, and sees every life as a life worth not just preserving, but protecting its ability to live in with dignity. I think you lose that when you're like, yeah, well, we're going to send 10 rockets full of people to the moon
We're
to.
talking about Elon Musk.
Exactly. And
Yeah,
that's
like,
why I think there needs to be a moral force that counters his
oh,
uh
and I don't disagree with that. I think that they're much more altruistic efforts that really do value humans for what they are.
mhm.
But coming back to the whole thing, like, this is the narcissist that he is. This is the guy that was going tit for tat with the president because he can't be in the same room with somebody who's more popular than him. He has a fucking scandal about cheating on a video game as an adult. Like, the guy is just next level narcissist. And that's where I don't necessarily think the ethics that you are concerned about are ethics that he is even remotely concerned about. I would imagine that he would look at it as, hey, let me take care of all of your I've got a planet full of robots that'll do your bidding. You just can't go back to Earth. I have all the food you will ever need. I have a dome in a cave for you. I've built that for you. Or the robots built that for you. There is a certain allure to what it is that he can promise, because there are the fanboys, there are the people that'll absolutely recognize this guy's pretty smart, he's got some technology, and if my life is, sub middle class on Earth, I'm just a normal person on Mars because everybody is getting the kind of technology that the upper class gets on Earth. Uh,
Yeah, and that's what I think at least for me, Doge was a big uh cleaning of the lens so that I could see Musk more clearly. Because he just wasn't uh he's just not he's not a serious person. Um so like Steve Bannon. is, he's the guy that literally went to prison for President Trump. And
The biggest advocate and person who is campaigning for the third term.
yeah, and he had an interview just this past week, and somebody asked him about Doge, and he's like, yeah, I'm real supportive of Doge, but before Musk leaves, he needs to provide a full accounting for all the things that he's talking about. Because he's talking, I mean, first he was talking about $2 billion, then $1 billion. Now he's got $150 million, and and he
And he
he
does
just is.
not like being questioned about it at all.
That's exactly right. And it's like, and now there's all these people, they're like, well, I can't believe they're not codifying these into law. It's like, wait a minute. There's just because Musk says this is so doesn't mean it's so. He's, there's, if basically he's been successful, but he, every every time he's been successful in business, it's because he was able to sell
Yep.
an idea. So there's and the let that sink in guy is is absolutely aware of what images mean and how you can use images to manipulate people to come on your way. So if you look at what he's doing, it's like, so like this Mars adventure, he's trying to romanticize Mars so that he can fool people into believing his idea, and he can just sell that. Then he can use that to turn into money for his Sims game. That's the whole thing. And so like I mean, so many of the things that he was uh, claiming uh, about government inefficiency. You know, he literally claimed that only 1% of the federal workforce was working from the office, and that they're all sitting at home, um, you know, drinking daiquiris in the afternoon, which is which is just plain not the truth.
Yeah.
There's
Nobody drinks daiquiris anymore.
Yeah, nobody drinks daiquiris anymore. But I mean, everybody who was working from home was either hired as a remote employee, or they had to have a telework agreement that was signed within that performance year. So part of their performance plan is that telework agreement. So their manager is saying, yeah, we want you to work from home, and while you're working from home, here are the things that we expect you to do over the course of this performance period, which is 1 year. And and so at the end of the year, they get a performance plan, and if they met their objectives, then everything's going fine. If they exceeded their objectives, then they get a performance bonus. All of those things take place inside the federal government. There is nobody well, not nobody, because that's just hyperbole. Obviously, there is somebody who has figured out the system and is able to just sit at home and do nothing. But, but, but that person is very, very few and far between. Most people that I know that work for the federal government are are conscientious people. They they and they're working for the federal government in many cases because they believe that they're working on behalf of the American people,
Mhm.
doing
Because
whatever it
not
is.
everybody wants to do what you did. Not everybody wants to go and fight. Not everybody wants to go and be a service member, but they do want to serve. And there's a lot of people that do the federal government because they know I can do my civic duty and I'm going to get a good retirement for the time that I put in for it.
Yeah, and so and my whole, I mean, I could go on and on because I have so much respect for federal employees. I could go on about that. But my big point is two things. One, I think Musk's mask has been pulled off. And the guy who pulled Musk's mask off is Steve Bannon. There's and it's it. I don't know. Like he just in the same interview when he was talking about Mars, Musk, uh, he's like, well, I'm not really happy about the president's budget, and I'm very disappointed in it, and they're undermining the work that we did at Doge, even though nobody knows what happened at Doge, and they're
Yeah, you can't undermine a mystery.
exactly, and I there's so it's very very clear that Musk has been sidelined at the White House. And he is painting it as, oh, I'm going back to work for my companies. But you don't see him in his, black t-shirt and black hat with his
I'm
with
dark MAGA anymore. Yeah.
yeah, he doesn't he's not walking around inside the Oval Office with his kid picking boogers. There's he's been very much sidelined, and he doesn't like it. But I think
How
that
many boogers do you think he wiped on the Resolute desk?
I don't know that that's funny. But JFK's kid had to be doing the same thing,
Oh,
and
for sure. How
and
many boogers do you think are on the underside of the Resolute desk? Just like, oh man, that's just, oh no.
yeah, and I hope they had the carpets cleaned since Clinton was in office. So there, so there's yeah, I think that a lot of people inside the government who are competent are like, wait a minute, we're not gonna do this. Uh, we're not gonna codify these things until we get some kind of an accounting that we know that they're true. And sure, some of the things that he identified are probably bad. Uh, but there's no way to know the difference between the things that he made up. And we talked about there's that person in Boise who was laid off by the VA.
Yeah.
There's the guy here in Colorado who was miraculously, as soon as the Doge team got in office, uh, somehow he died, according to the Social Security Administration, and they just stopped sending him money. And they're like saying, well, anybody who complains about not getting their money is obviously a scammer.
Right.
What in the ever loving is that? That
Yeah.
that yeah, you've got to have a really really low opinion of Americans to believe the things that Elon Musk was saying about the Americans who work for the government. They're just not. It's just not that way.
The last 2 weeks, it's been kind of wonderful. I have not thought about Elon Musk once. It was one of the most beautiful things because I'd made this video, and we were talking about this earlier about how I've been just listening to the Dungeon Crawler Carl book series, and I have paid no attention to the news for the last little bit of time. We took last week off, and I haven't been paying attention to anything. And the amount of stress that I haven't been feeling has been really fantastic. So when I got online and I see, oh, President Macron got slapped in the face by his wife. Cool. I can literally walk away from crazy for any amount of time and come back, and crazy is still there. It's always still there. So it's nice to just be able to, turn off for a little bit of time and just detox from all of it. Which is probably a decent segue into the fact that this is now our 18th episode. We have gone almost 18 weeks consecutively. We've technically gone 20 weeks and only didn't record 1 week, but we did. The sixth episode got a mulligan, and last week we took just an off week. But we've been doing this very, very, very consistently, and I think it's time for us to have a seasonal break. and let us actually have a little bit of recovering time and rebalancing, especially with me starting my second business. I've got some clients that I'm working on with that. It's getting to be summertime, so we can actually start enjoying some of the beautiful weather that the country is seeing before the hellfire of summer really comes in July. So we are going to be taking the next 6 weeks off. We will be recording again mid-July, and we'll probably have a couple of short here videos that'll just be touching base on what's going on in the world at the time. But in the meantime, if this has been your first episode with us, we really appreciate it. And we will be back after this break. But if you know of anyone who needs an example of how to be able to have a conversation with family members that might see things from the other side, send a link to our podcast. And we would love to be an example of how you can continue having the conversation, even if you don't necessarily see eye to eye ideologically. If you have been listening to us for a while and you haven't already, you should leave us a review, and you should do that on Spotify or Amazon Music or on YouTube. And if you're not following us, follow us on any of the places that you're getting your podcasts right now. But in the meantime, we appreciate you spending some time with us, and we will see you after our seasonal break, and be well.
Take care, y'all.